All right, so the 727 exam is also going to want you to be able to configure worksheets and workbooks for distribution. What we're mostly talking about here is being able to print. So setting the print area, printing all or part of a workbook, print scaling, and so on. So that's what we'll look at in this lesson here. So in terms of printing all or part, what is really being referred to here is your ability to go to the File tab of the ribbon, which of course gets us to the Backstage view, and then just have a familiarity with the print options here. So notice that this is printing in portrait mode right now, and then you can direct where it's printing to and what the settings are. So are we printing the active sheets or printing the entire workbook, or are we printing a selection? So you can print just a selection by first making that selection, of course, and then coming back to the Backstage view in the print module here and then clicking on that drop down. So that's one way that you could print part of your workbook, or again, print just an active sheet. That is the default. Now, this is also the place where you can make a quick change to the scaling, and that can sometimes improve your printed output. And the way that you do that, or one of the ways you might do that, is right here, no scaling, and that will print everything at their actual size. Or do you want to fit the entire sheet on a single page? So I'll click that, and now you can see that this might be more pleasing output, at least to the eye. So back to 100%, notice that I have this information here, and I've got this funny second page where I just have one column of information, and I've got some notes off to the right-hand side. So in this case, especially if we're going to print in portrait mode, it'll probably make sense to scale and fit the sheet on a single page. So we'll go back to the view of the entire workbook here. And this ties in somewhat to the other workbook views we can have. So the page break preview shows us exactly what will be page 1 and page 2 output in this instance here. The page layout is where we can go in and add header and footer. We've seen that earlier. And in terms of the custom views, if you are creating a view and say you didn't want the grid lines on the view and you wanted to save this as a custom view, then you can add and create a new custom view. So don't expect that to be any kind of testable information, but just know about its utility if you need it. Personally, I never use any custom views with Excel because once you get familiar with how to change your view or how to set your print area, it's really not that necessary. Now, in terms of other ways to configure the printed output, what you should be familiar with is the Page Layout tab. And here you should get familiar with the buttons on the Page Setup section. So in terms of the margins, pretty self-explanatory. You can click on Custom Margins. It'll bring up a dialog box, and you can set these and change the margins from the default to 0.7 to 1 inch or less than 1 inch, whatever you want. You can also do something like changing the orientation, and in this case here, it will make a dramatic difference in the printed output. So for example, we don't really see anything different in the spreadsheet, but if I go back to the Backstage view and print, in the print preview, of course, this made a huge difference. Now, I'll go back here and continuing on in the page layout. The other thing that is probably most important is this, the ability to print titles. So if you give this a click, it gives you to the page setup dialog box here. And in the sheet, here is the most important thing, displaying repeating rows. So if you're printing output, a lot of times you might have a spreadsheet with 50 rows, with 500 rows, something like that. And at the top of every page, you would want certain information to be repeated. And that would make it a lot more user-friendly in terms of print and output. So what you do is, in this dialog here, rows to repeat at the top, give that a click, and then select that row right there. Once you're done, you can give that a click in the page setup rows to repeat, and then click on OK. Now when you print this output, the row 3 of 2018 average, 2018 total, and so on will be at the top of every page. Now, to help confirm this, all I've done is taken some information and copied and pasted. So the first 9 rows I have pasted down here just to make sure that that is my page break indicator. I'm also going to get some information that's a little bit off the page. I'm going to shorten this just a little bit. There, something like that. I'll just change it to display. Now when I go back to the file print, notice that this is 2 pages of output, but keep your eye on this row right here. When I get to the second page, the row repeats. So as I said, if you're comfortable with the options that are in page setup and the options that are in the workbook views, you should be in great shape in terms of creating the printed output you want.